Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice podcast channel. Tonight we're stepping into a snowbound railway station in the winter of 1971, where a silver passenger train waits beneath pale platform lamps. Snow gathers along the rails, softening every edge and swallowing the usual noise of the city. The engine breathes steadily in the darkness, sending warm clouds of steam into the cold air. You stand beneath the station roof with your coat pulled close, holding a small suitcase in one gloved hand. Beyond the platform, the storm thickens, white flakes spin through the yellow light, brushing against the train windows and disappearing beneath the wheels. So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. You can also share your location and your local time in the comments. It is always comforting to imagine listeners resting in different corners of the world while the same quiet journey unfolds. A conductor raises one hand beside the open door. The warm light from inside spills across the snowy platform. You step forward. Now it's time to rest. Your shoe meets the first metal step, and the sound is small but satisfying. The step feels firm beneath you, though a thin trace of melted snow makes it shine. You grip the cold handrail and climb into the narrow entrance of the sleeper car. The change is immediate. Outside, the storm rules everything. Inside, the air is warm, dry, and faintly scented with wool, polished wood, old upholstery, and railway coffee. The corridor stretches ahead beneath a row of modest ceiling lights. Their glow is not bright. It is gentle and golden, just enough to reveal brass handles, patterned carpet, and closed compartment doors. The train seems to possess its own private weather. Heat rises from vents near the floor. Windows tremble softly in their frames. Somewhere farther down the car, a latch clicks, followed by the quiet murmur of passengers settling into their rooms. You pause near the entrance while the conductor checks your paper ticket. He wears a dark uniform, polished shoes, and a cap that seems designed to survive both blizzards and to foil travellers. His expression is calm, as though winter storms are merely another item on the evening schedule. He studies the ticket, punches it with a small metal tool, and points along the corridor. Your room waits near the centre of the car. Records confirm that Amtrak began operating in May 1971, taking responsibility for many passenger routes that private railway companies no longer wish to maintain. That fact sounds orderly when written in a history book. On the platform, however, the new system often looks less polished. The cars come from different railways. Their paint schemes do not always match. One car may appear silver and modern, while the next carries faded colours from a company that has nearly vanished from public memory. The result is practical, imperfect, and strangely charming. Oddly enough, railway enthusiasts later give these mixed early trains a cheerful nickname because of their many colours. To a tired traveller, they simply look like a collection of old survivors tied together and sent bravely into the snow. You begin walking through the corridor. The floor shifts slightly beneath your feet, although the train has not yet moved. The engine sends a deep vibration through the car, a patient mechanical pulse that you feel through the soles of your shoes. Your suitcase brushes against the wall. A door opens briefly, revealing an elderly woman arranging a blanket over her knees. She gives you a polite smile before sliding the door closed again. From another room comes the rustle of a newspaper. Farther ahead, someone laughs quietly, then remembers the hour and lowers their voice. The corridor window shows the platform outside. Snow covers the roof of a luggage cart. A railway worker pushes through the storm with his shoulders bent forward, leaving dark footprints that vanish almost as soon as they appear. The station clock hangs above him, its hands moving with unnecessary confidence. Your room number appears on a small metal plate. You find the handle, turn it, and slide the door open. The compartment is compact, very compact. A modern hotel might call it intimate. A less generous traveller might call it a closet with excellent transportation. Still, everything has a purpose. There is a wide seat beneath the window upholstered in dark fabric. A small folding table rests against the wall. A reading lamp waits above your shoulder. Hooks hold your coat and hat. A narrow mirror reflects your face, slightly distorted by years of polishing. The glass is cold when you touch it. Outside, snow races sideways through the platform light. The flakes strike the window and melt into wandering lines of water. Beyond them, the station building stands dim and solid, its doors opening and closing as the last passengers hurry aboard. You place your suitcase beneath the seat and remove your gloves. Your fingers tingle as warmth returns. The train gives a sudden metallic knock, followed by a long sigh from the air system. Scholars still argue over whether the creation of Amtrak represents the rescue of American passenger rail or the careful management of its decline. Sitting in this little room, you do not need to solve that question. You only know that the train exists. The storm is worsening, and you have a bed waiting somewhere inside the walls. A voice passes through the corridor, announcing that departure is near. You hang your coat on the hook and sit beside the window. The cushion gives beneath you with a soft creak above the seat. The hidden berth remains folded away, waiting for the sleeping car attendant to release it later in the evening. The room feels protected. The wind may press against the train, but it cannot enter. The snow may bury the tracks behind you, but the locomotive stands ready at the front, warm and heavy and determined. On the platform, the conductor calls one final warning. A door slams, locks turn. The station bell rings somewhere beyond the glass, faint beneath the storm. For a moment, nothing happens. The train seems to hold its breath. Then the car moves with such gentleness that you notice only because the platform begins to slide away. A luggage cart drifts past the window, then a bench, then the station clock. The wheels find their rhythm beneath you. The journey has begun. The room accepts you slowly, revealing its secrets one handle, hinge, and polished fitting at a time. You sit with your back against the upholstered wall and let your eyes travel across the narrow space. Nothing is wasted. Every surface appears capable of folding and sliding, opening, or transforming. The cabin is less like an ordinary bedroom and more like a carefully arranged puzzle designed by people who distrust empty corners. A small lamp glows beside your shoulder. Its shade is cream-coloured, slightly yellowed with age, and warm enough to soften the metal walls around it. The light settles across the fabric seat, the folding table, and the little mirror above the wash area. It gives the room a peaceful evening colour, as though sunset has somehow been captured and stored inside the fixture. You turn the switch once, the lamp clicks off. You turn it again, and the golden circle returns. The mechanism feels solid, built in an age when switches seem expected to survive decades of impatient fingers. A faint vibration runs through it, and the shade trembles almost invisibly whenever the wheels pass over a joint in the rail. Near the window, you discover a narrow shelf with a raised edge. It's just wide enough for a book, a pair of glasses, or a cup of water. The raised lip prevents these items from sliding onto the floor when the train sways around a curve. Such practical details are everywhere. Quiet evidence that the room has learned from thousands of journeys. You unfold the little table. It lowers with a careful metallic movement and rests between your knees. The surface carries a few scratches left by forgotten travellers. Perhaps one came from a fountain pen. Another may have been made by a heavy camera, a dinner tray, or a child dragging a toy across the wood. The table is not perfectly level. Nothing on a moving train ever seems perfectly level for long. You place your hand flat upon it and feel the constant motion beneath your palm. The railway is not smooth in the way a modern elevator is smooth. It communicates. It taps, shudders, and murmurs. Every bridge and curve sends a different message through the frame. Equipment guides from the period confirm that many private sleeping rooms are designed to serve two purposes. By day, they provide seating and a small personal retreat. By night, hidden beds unfold from walls or ceilings, turning the same limited space into sleeping quarters. Above you, the main berth waits behind a broad panel. You study the catches holding it in place, They look reassuringly serious. A bed suspended over your head should inspire confidence, and these catches appear prepared to defend their reputation. You imagine the sleeping car attendant arriving later, releasing the panel and lowering the berth with the smooth confidence of someone who has performed the same task hundreds of times. Sheets will be tightened, pillows placed, and blankets arranged while you stand politely in the corridor, pretending not to wonder how an entire bed fits inside the wall. A second reading light is mounted higher up for the person using the berth. Beside it rests a small netted pocket. The elastic has grown tired, but it still offers a place for a watch, a paperback, or perhaps a handkerchief folded with unnecessary precision. Oddly enough, some sleeping car rooms include a concealed toilet beneath a padded lid. You find it by lifting a panel near the seat. There it is, modestly hidden and undeniably practical. The arrangement requires a certain railway etiquette. Two passengers sharing such a room must either become close friends or develop an impressive talent for temporary absence. Privacy on a train is sometimes less a physical condition and more a carefully negotiated agreement. You lower the lid again with great respect. Beside the mirror, a tiny metal basin folds down from the wall. You release the catch and it opens like a shallow silver bowl. 2 taps sit above it, marked for hot and cold water. The hot tap produces a hesitant stream, followed by a cough from somewhere inside the pipes. The cold tap responds more confidently. The water carries the faint mineral scent common to old railway plumbing. A small paper cup waits in a holder. A wrapped piece of soap rests nearby, along with a neatly folded towel that feels slightly rough beneath your fingers. There is no marble counter, no broad mirror, and certainly no basket of expensive lotions. The room offers only what is necessary, then expect you to be sensible about it. A narrow cupboard opens beneath the basin. Inside, you find space for shoes and a few personal items. The door closes with a click, then opens again when the car jolts. You try once more, pressing firmly until the latch catches. This time it stays closed for nearly 20 seconds. The train gives another sway and the cupboard door quietly opens. You close it a third time and decide that the cupboard has strong personal opinions. The heating vent near the floor sends out a steady ribbon of warm air. You move 1 foot closer and feel the chill leaving your shoe. The temperature is not perfectly controlled. The room alternates between pleasantly warm and slightly too warm, encouraging you to adjust your clothing rather than the machinery. A rotary control on the wall claims to regulate the heat. You turn it carefully. Nothing obvious happens. This is also part of the charm. Historians remain divided over whether these compact rooms represent the height of clever railway design, or evidence that private passenger comfort is being squeezed into ever smaller spaces. From your seat, both arguments seem reasonable. The room is cramped, yet ingenious, awkward, yet comforting. It asks you to surrender space, but in return it gives you a door that closes, a window of your own, and a temporary world no wider than your outstretched arms. You pull the curtain partly across the glass. The fabric is thick and patterned with muted lines. It smells faintly of dust warmed by the lamp. A metal hook holds it in place, though the hook squeaks each time the car rocks. The room has many sounds now. The soft hum of heat, the delicate tapping of the curtain ring, the occasional rattle of the wash basin catch, the deep rolling rhythm below the floor. You remove your shoes and place them beneath the seat. Your feet rest on the carpet, which feels coarse but warm. You lean back, loosen your collar, and let the small cabin arrange itself around you. Every object seems close enough to touch without standing. The lamp glows, the table trembles. The cupboard considers opening again, and within the narrow, wonderfully dated room, you begin to understand the luxury of having so little space and nowhere else you need to be. The station begins to release its hold on you. At first, the movement is almost too gentle to notice. The window frame trembles. The water in your paper cup forms a tiny ring, and the platform lamps seem to drift backward through the snow. Then the wheels settle into a steady pattern beneath the floor. each turn carrying you farther from the bright shelter of the station. You lean closer to the glass. A railway worker stands beside the final coach, his lantern glowing red through the storm. He watches the train pass with one hand raised against the wind. Snow gathers on his shoulders and cap, but he remains still until the last car clears the platform. The station roof slides from view. For a few moments, the train travels beside brick warehouses and dark office buildings. Their windows reflect brief flashes of silver metal and warm cabin light. Fire escapes climb empty walls. Loading doors stand closed beneath white ledges of snow. A row of parked automobiles appears half buried, their shape softened into quiet mounds. The city seems to be falling asleep under a thick wool blanket. Your train, however, is only beginning its work. The locomotive pulls harder as the rails curve away from the station district. You feel the effort through the floor, a deeper vibration that rises into the seat. The couplings between the cars tighten one by one, producing a chain of dull knocks that travels along the train. It sounds as though a giant is gently closing a series of heavy doors. You pass beneath a bridge where snow drops from the iron beams in loose powder. For an instant, the window fills with darkness. Then the train emerges into a broad railway yard, where dozens of tracks spread across the ground like black threads stitched into white cloth. Freight cars stand motionless in long rows. Some are boxcars with faded lettering. Others are tank cars, rounded and dark, wearing narrow caps of snow. A switch engine waits beside a signal tower, its lamp glowing through clouds of exhaust. Men in heavy coats move between the tracks, carrying lanterns that bob like small stars near the ground. Railway operations depend upon carefully controlled signals and switches and instructions from dispatchers. In winter, workers must keep the moving parts of track switches free from packed snow and ice. A frozen switch can prevent a train from entering the correct line, so crews use heaters, brooms, shovels, and patient hands to keep the route open. From your warm seat, the work looks almost peaceful. Out there, it is anything but easy. One worker bends beside a switch with a long broom. Another checks a metal housing near the rail. Their boots leave deep marks between the ties. The storm fills those marks almost immediately, erasing evidence of their labour, while demanding that the labour continue. A signal ahead shines green. The colour appears unusually bright against the white night. It hangs above the rails for a few seconds, then sweeps past your window and disappears behind the car. The train gathers speed. Buildings begin to arrive and vanish more quickly. Backyards flash into view, each one holding a different winter scene. A clothesline sags under snow. A wooden fence leans toward the tracks. A porch lamp illuminates an empty chair. In one upstairs window, a person stands behind a curtain and watches the train pass. You wonder where that person imagined you were going. Perhaps they picture distant cities, mountain valleys, or some grand hotel at the end of the line. Perhaps they simply see a row of glowing windows and wish they were inside one of them. A curious footnote of railway engineering hides beneath the locomotive. When steel wheels struggle for grip on wet or icy rails, the engine can release sand onto the track. The grains create extra friction, helping the wheels hold firmly as power is applied. It's a simple answer to a complicated problem, and rather satisfying to imagine. Even a great machine sometimes needs a handful of sand beneath its feet. The storm presses harder against the glass. Snow no longer falls in gentle flakes. It streams sideways in pale ribbons, caught in the train light and pulled into twisting shapes by the wind. The view beyond the window becomes uncertain. Houses, telegraph poles, and trees appear for a moment, then dissolve into white. Inside, every sound grows more distinct. The wheels strike the rail joints with a measured beat. The door gives a soft rattle in its frame. Pipes hum behind the wall. Somewhere in the corridor, a suitcase shifts and bumps against a partition. You place your palm against the window. The glass is cold enough to make your skin tighten. On the other side lies a world of wind, frozen ground, and darkness. On your side, The lamp remains steady and the heating vent breathes warm air across your ankles. The contrast feels almost luxurious. A road runs beside the railway for a short distance. Headlamps move slowly through the storm, each automobile creeping along the white pavement. The train overtakes them with calm authority. One by one, the lights fall behind. There is a quiet pleasure in passing traffic while seated comfortably with your shoes removed. You do not need to steer. You do not need to watch for ice. You do not need to argue with a road map under a weak dashboard lamp. The railway carries the responsibility. Historians disagree on whether the romance of night travel comes from genuine comfort or from the human habit of turning inconvenience into memory. Trains can be noisy, cramped, late, and unpredictable. Yet the same qualities create intimacy: the narrow corridors, shared meals, dim lamps, and constant motion separate ordinary life from the journey. Beyond the final neighbourhoods, the land opens. Dark fields stretch away beneath the snow. Farmhouses stand at great distances from one another, their windows shining softly. Bare trees gather along frozen streams. The train whistle sounds at a crossing, long and low, sending its voice across the fields. The note fades slowly into the storm. A crossing bell rings as striped gates lower over an empty road. Red warning lights flash upon the snow. For a second, every drift glows crimson. Then the last car passes, and darkness closes over the road again. You settle deeper into the seat. The city lights have vanished. Only scattered signals and distant homes remain. The train continues southward through the falling snow, its windows warm, its wheels certain, and its long silver body moving steadily into the winter night. A soft chime sounds through the sleeping car, followed by the announcement that dinner is being served. You open your compartment door and step into the corridor, where the train moves with a slow, side-to-side sway. The carpet presses softly beneath your feet. Brass handles shine under the ceiling lamps, and each window holds a different arrangement of snow, shadow, and passing light. The dining car lies several coaches away. You begin the journey through the train, sliding open the heavy door at the end of the sleeper. Cold air slips around your wrists as you enter the narrow space between cars. Beneath you, metal plates shift and complain. The coupling groans, the wheels thunder more loudly, and the dark gap below seems far too interested in your shoes. You take hold of the rail and cross carefully. The next cars are quieter. Passengers sit beneath reading lamps, some with books open, others gazing through curtains at the storm. A man in a brown jacket sleeps with his chin resting on his chest. Across the aisle, a woman works patiently on a piece of knitting, her needles clicking in perfect competition with the rails. Another door leads to the lounge. Here, the air smells of tobacco, coffee, and warm fabric. A few travellers sit at small tables with glasses in front of them. Their voices remain low, as though the train itself has asked everyone to respect the hour. You continue onward. At last, the dining car door opens. The atmosphere changes at once. White tablecloths stretch across narrow tables. Small lamps cast circles of amber light upon polished cutlery. Glasses tremble gently beside folded napkins. The windows are dark mirrors, reflecting faces, jackets, and the occasional bright streak of snow beyond the glass. A steward greets you and gestures towards an empty place. Railway dining follows a social custom that may surprise modern travellers. When the car is busy, strangers are seated together at the same table. Empty chairs are considered wasted space, and the railway expects conversation to fill the gaps. You are guided to a table for four. An older couple already sits beside the window. The man wears a dark suit with a loosened tie, while the woman has placed her handbag carefully between her shoes. Across from them sits a young schoolteacher travelling south to visit her sister. You take the final chair. Introductions pass quietly around the table. No one speaks for too long. The rhythm of the train seems to measure each sentence, leaving small spaces between words. The steward hands you a menu printed on the thick paper. The choices are simple but inviting. Roast beef with potatoes, baked fish with rice, chicken in gravy, a vegetable plate for anyone feeling unusually virtuous. Soup may be ordered first, followed by pie, pudding, or ice cream if the kitchen still has enough. You select the roast beef. The steward writes the order with a short pencil, balancing easily while the car leans through a curve. His body adjusts without visible effort. You, meanwhile, place one hand against the table to keep from drifting toward the schoolteacher. She smiles. Everyone learns the dance eventually. Records from passenger railways confirm that full dining cars once carried their own kitchens, where cooks prepared meals while the train moved at speed. They worked beside hot ovens, boiling pots, sharp utensils, and stacks of plates, all within a room that shook, tilted, and occasionally stopped with little warning. It is difficult enough to butter bread at the table. Preparing an entire dinner under such conditions seems close to a minor miracle. Your soup arrives first. The bowl is wide and shallow. It is designed to reduce spills. Steam rises from the surface and carrying the scent of onion, pepper, and beef stock. You lift the spoon carefully. The liquid trembles in pauses, then reaches your mouth without disaster. Outside, the storm erases the countryside. Every few seconds, a signal lamp flashes through the window. Green light sweeps across the Dorbukoth, followed by darkness. Then a farmhouse appears far away, glowing for an instant before vanishing behind the snow. Conversation begins with the weather. It then moves to railway delays, family visits, and the rising cost of nearly everything. The older gentleman complains gently about the price of gasoline. His wife reminds him that he has complained about gasoline since they were married. He considers this. Then he admits she may be correct. A curious footnote concerns the dining car tablecloths. Experienced staff sometimes dampen the cloth slightly before placing it on the table. The moisture helps keep plates and glasses from sliding too freely as the train rounds curves. You touch the cloth with your fingertips. It does feel faintly cool. The roast beef arrives on a heavy plate, accompanied by the mashed potatoes, green beans, and a generous pool of brown gravy. A warm roll rests on a smaller dish. The meal is plain, comforting, and exactly suited to a winter night. You cut the meat while the carriage rocks. The knife slips once, but the potato catches it. No dignity is lost. The food carries the deep warmth of a kitchen that has been working since late afternoon. The gravy is rich, the beans are soft, the roll tears open with a quiet sigh, releasing a trace of steam. Scholars remain divided on whether railway dining represents true elegance or carefully staged efficiency. Some see the white cloths and formal service as part of a grand tradition. Others point out that every detail, from shared tables to compact menus, exists because space and time are limited. Both ideas seem true. The setting is graceful, but nothing is accidental. The steward moves quickly between tables, collecting plates and refilling water glasses. The cooks remain hidden behind a swinging door, though you hear the clatter of pans and the sharp ring of a service bell. Dessert arrives in the form of apple pie. The crust is slightly uneven, the filling warm and heavy with cinnamon. A spoonful of cream rests beside it, slowly melting as the train passes over rough track. The lights flicker once, every conversation pauses. Then the lamps steady, and the room continues as though nothing happened. Coffee is poured into a thick cup. Its scent rises through the warm air. You hold the cup with both hands and feel the heat move into your fingers. Around you, strangers speak more softly now. Plates are nearly empty. Snow races beside the windows. The dining car sways through the night like a narrow, glowing room carried across a dark and frozen world. For a little while, dinner seems less like a meal and more like shelter. The dining car grows quieter as plates disappear and coffee cools in thick cups. You remain beside the window while the train rolls through the storm, carrying you in a machine that belongs to a new company, but still wears the memories of many older ones. The silver walls, faded upholstery, brass fittings, and mismatched paint reveal a railway system assembled from whatever remained useful. Nothing feels entirely new. That is because almost nothing is. When Amtrak begins service in May 1971, it does not receive a shining fleet built for a fresh national beginning. It inherits locomotives, coaches, sleeping cars, kitchens, baggage, keys, maintenance troubles, and complicated habits from private railway companies across the country. You can almost sense those former owners in the details. A curtain may carry one pattern, while the carpet follows another. A plate in the dining car might bear an old railway emblem that no longer matches the name printed on your ticket. The sleeping car attendant may have spent years serving passengers under a company whose colours have recently vanished from the timetable. The train is united by purpose, but not yet by appearance. It resembles a family gathered for a formal photograph before anyone has agreed on what to wear. Official records establish that the National Railroad Passenger Corporation takes over most intercity passenger service in the United States on the first day of May in 1971. The government and participating railway companies create it because private passenger operations have been losing money for years. Automobiles offer freedom. Airlines offer speed. Passenger trains, once the proud centre of long-distance travel, struggle to compete. The railway companies still earn money carrying freight, but many no longer wish to support lightly filled passenger cars, expensive stations, dining crews, sleeping staff, and routes that cross hundreds of miles at a financial loss. The solution is bold and slightly awkward. A new national corporation will operate the trains. You picture officials in meeting rooms studying maps covered with coloured lines. Some routes appear essential, others seem impossible to justify. Towns that have heard passenger whistles for generations suddenly discover that their trains may disappear. The first Amtrak map is smaller than the network it replaces. Many services end immediately. Stations fall silent. Ticket windows close. Families in smaller communities find that the train no longer stops nearby, or no longer runs at all. A national system has been saved, yet large parts of the old system are removed during the rescue. No broad agreement has been reached on whether this moment should be remembered mainly as preservation or abandonment. One view holds that without Amtrak, nearly all long-distance passenger rail might have vanished. Another argues that the reduced network cuts too deeply, leaving too many communities without meaningful service. From your place at the table, the debate does not feel distant. Every mile of track outside the window belongs to a decision. Every station served, skipped, or closed reflects arguments over money, geography, public duty, and national identity. The train itself carries those arguments southward. Its coaches come from celebrated railway names that once competed fiercely for passengers. Each company advertised its own meals, beds, lounges, uniforms, and scenic routes. Some promised modern speed, others offered polished tradition. Their posters showed relaxed travellers gazing from spotless windows, never dropping soup during a sudden curve. Now their equipment travels beneath one national banner. A curious aside hides inside the early paint schemes, because the inherited cars retain many different colours. Passengers and railway workers sometimes see trains made of silver, red, blue, yellow, green, and faded shades that resist easy description. The effect is so mixed that enthusiasts compare the trains to strings of colourful candies. It is cheerful branding created entirely by necessity. The new company cannot repaint everything at once. It has schedules to operate, employees to organise, locomotives to repair, tickets to print, and passengers who still expect to reach their destinations. Even the name Amtrak is new to the public. It combines ideas of American travel and railway track into a compact title meant to sound modern. The lettering begins appearing on stations and equipment, though older signs remain in many places. A traveller may enter beneath the name of a vanished company, buy a ticket from Amtrak, and board a car painted for someone else. The railway has changed identity faster than it can change its furniture. You finish your coffee and watch the surface tilt gently in the cup. The sleeping car attendant passes through the dining car and speaks with the steward. Both men have years of railway experience, but their employer is only months old. Their skills come from an earlier world of private companies. Strict seniority, complex labour rules, and traditions learned through repetition. The corporation may be new, the people keeping it alive are not beginners. Porters, conductors, cooks, mechanics, ticket clerks, dispatchers, and station workers carry the system through its uncertain first year. They know which doors stick in cold weather, they know how to calm an anxious passenger, repair a stubborn berth, and balance a tray while crossing rough track. Without that knowledge, the national experiment would be only a name on paper. The train enters a long curve. Through the front windows of the dining car, you can briefly see several coaches bending ahead, their illuminated windows forming a chain through the darkness. Each car seems separate, yet all follow the same rails. That image suits Amtrak in 1971. It is a collection of inherited pieces, linked by necessity, moving toward a future no one can clearly see. Some people expect the company to fail within a few years. Others hope it will rebuild passenger travel and prove that trains still matter. Politicians argue over funding. Railway executives negotiate responsibilities. Passengers judge the service by late arrivals, clean sheets, hot meals, and whether the heating system behaves itself. The future of national rail may depend partly on grand policy. It may also depend on whether the cupboard door stays closed. You rise from the table as the steward collects the final cup. The car gives a gentle sway, and you steady yourself against the seat. Beyond the glass, snow continues to cover the countryside. Inside, the young National Railway carries its mismatched inheritance through the night, uncertain but moving, imperfect but alive. The train enters a country shaped by furnaces, foundries, warehouses, and river docks. You stand for a moment in the dim passage beside the lounge, watching the darkness through a broad window. Snow sweeps over the industrial outskirts in restless sheets. Tall chimneys rise beyond the tracks, some releasing smoke that bends sharply beneath the wind. Others stand silent, black against the cloudy sky. A factory wall approaches, fills the glass, and slips away. Its windows are arranged in long rows. A few remain lit, revealing steel beams, hanging lamps, and machinery too large to understand at a glance. The building seems almost empty. Yet somewhere inside, a night crew continues working while most of the city sleeps. The train passes a loading yard where stacks of timber lie under white coverings. Forklifts rest beside frozen puddles, railway wagons wait on sidings in their roofs rounded with snow. A watchman stands inside a small wooden hut, reading beneath a bare bulb. He looks up as your carriage passes. For 1 second you see him clearly. Then his hut becomes another yellow square shrinking in the distance. The northern industrial landscape possesses a severe beauty at night. It is not graceful in the manner of mountains or forests. Its beauty comes from scale, labour, and endurance. Brick walls hold decades of soot. Water towers rise over rooftops. Pipes cross between buildings on high metal supports, forming narrow bridges for steam and shadow. You feel the wheels strike a junction. The carriage shivers. Glasses clink somewhere nearby, and a door swings inward before settling against its latch. The railway divides into several parallel lines, each disappearing between storage sheds and dark freight depots. A switch tower stands above them. Inside, a man moves among levers and lamps, directing trains through the maze. His work requires concentration, especially during a storm, when snow can hide track details and wind can blur the signal lights. Railway records confirm that northern cities grew closely around rail lines during the 19th and 20th centuries. Factories needed coal, iron, timber, grain, and workers. Trains delivered raw materials, carried finished goods, and connected industrial neighbourhoods to distant markets. The rails are not simply passing through these cities. They helped create them. You move into the lounge and choose a chair beside the window. The fabric feels rough beneath your hand. A small table trembles between you and the glass. Someone has left a folded evening newspaper on the seat nearby, its corners curled from use. Outside, a river appears. At first, you see only a pale open space between buildings. Then moonlight catches a broad sheet of ice, broken into places by the dark moving water. Warehouses line both banks. Cranes stand over the docks with their long arms raised, frozen into patient poses. The bridge begins beneath you with a hollow roar. The sound changes completely. Wheels that seem gentle on solid ground now thunder over steel plates and open framework. You feel the vibration through the chair, the table, and your ribs. Below, the river moves through the winter darkness. Chunks of ice turn slowly in the current. A tugboat rests against the bank, its deck lights glowing through snow. Near the far shore, a narrow channel remains open where warmer water enters from an industrial plant. A peculiar local habit once appears around some factory districts during severe winters. Workers leave lunch pails near warm pipes or machinery, trusting the building itself to keep soup from freezing. It is not an official service. Naturally, the factory provides heat, noise, employment, and occasionally a very patient approach to lunchtime. The bridge ends with a sudden return to solid ground. You pass rows of workers' houses built close together. Their back steps face the railway. Curtains cover most windows, but small domestic scenes appear in the gaps as a woman washes dishes beneath a bright kitchen lamp. A child stands on a chair, perhaps trying to see the train. A man opens a back door to shake snow from a rug, pauses when the whistle sounds, and watches the glowing carriages pass. These homes seem close enough to touch. Laundry lines stretch between narrow yards. Bicycles lean against fences. Coal sheds sit behind porches. The train moves through private worlds without entering them, offering you brief glimpses that vanish before any story can be completed. At a road crossing, bells begin to ring. A truck waits behind the lowered gate, its headlights revealing thick flakes tumbling toward the pavement. The driver rests one arm against the window. He appears neither angry nor hurried. Perhaps he knows this train. Perhaps he measures his night by its passing. The whistle sounds again, deeper now. It travels over the roofs, along the river, and into the sleeping streets. Arguments among historians split over whether industrial growth brought greater opportunity or merely exchanged rural hardship for crowded urban struggle. The factories created wages, transport, and powerful cities. They also produced smoke, dangerous work, harsh schedules, and neighbourhoods where families lived beneath constant noise. From the warm lounge, the debate arrives as a landscape. You see prosperity in the immense buildings and hardship in the small houses pressed against their walls. You see human ambition in bridges, cranes, and glowing furnaces. You also see fatigue in the watchman's lonely hut and the kitchen light burning long past midnight. The city begins to thin. Factories give way to repair yards, fuel tanks, and open lots. Snow covers abandoned machinery so completely that each shape becomes soft and mysterious. A rusted conveyor looks like the spine of some sleeping creature. Empty drums stand in a white field like short-faced, silent guards. Then come the smaller towns. Their stations are modest brick buildings with wooden benches under the roof. Some platforms hold passengers wrapped in heavy coats. Others are empty except for snow, a timetable case, and a single lamp humming above the door. The train does not stop at every place. Some towns receive only the whistle. You watch church steeples rise beyond dark rooftops. A cinema sign glows faintly on a main street. A diner remains open beside the road, its windows bright and fogged with heat. 2 customers sit at the counter while a waitress pours coffee beneath hanging lamps. Farther on, the buildings disappear, open fields return, separated by hedges and frozen streams. Bare trees stand along the railway, their branches carrying narrow lines of snow. The industrial glow remains on the horizon. staining the clouds a faint orange. You lower your head against the chair. The train continues through northern darkness, carrying steel, memory and sleeping passengers past rivers, mills, crossing bells, and towns that appear briefly in the storm before fading into the night. You slide the compartment door shut and turn the small lock until it settles into place with a firm click. The sound changes the room. Corridor footsteps become muted. Voices soften into indistinct murmurs. The narrow cabin feels less like part of a public train and more like a private island moving through darkness. You know that only a thin wall separates you from dozens of strangers. Yet the closed door creates a surprising sense of distance. You begin the quiet rituals of an overnight journey. Your coat hangs from the wall hook, still cool around the shoulders. You empty your pockets onto the folding table. A ticket stub, a handkerchief, a few coins, and a small key form a neat row beneath the lamp. The coins tremble whenever the wheels cross rough track. You decide to wash before settling down. The basin folds from the wall with a careful pull. Water runs from the tap in an uncertain stream. Warm at first, then suddenly cool. You wet the rough towel and press it against your face. The simple touch feels refreshing. Outside the window, snow and darkness rush past. Inside, you stand before a mirror barely wide enough to contain your shoulders. The reflection shifts with every curve, making your face appear thoughtful one moment and mildly seasick the next. You brush your teeth while holding the basin for balance. This requires more concentration than expected. The train leans to one side, and the water in the basin follows. You lean with it. Toothbrush in hand, conducting a private contest between dignity and railway motion. No one sees the performance, which is fortunate. Sleeping car records from this period show that attendants perform far more than a single task. They prepare beds, carry luggage, answer bells, provide towels and water, guide passengers through unfamiliar equipment, and remain available through the night. Their labour keeps the private rooms orderly while making the complicated machinery of travel appear effortless. A small service button rests near the door. You examine it but do not press. Calling the attendant simply to ask what the button does would create a perfect circle of inconvenience. You begin changing into sleeping clothes. The room suddenly seems much smaller. Every movement must be planned. You remove one shoe while standing on the other foot, then reach for the wall as the carriage sways. Your elbow meets the mirror, your shoulder brushes the curtain, a sleeve catches briefly on the table latch. You learn to move slowly. There is no room for dramatic gestures in a railway compartment. Even putting on a shirt becomes a measured act of engineering. Arms rise one at a time, buttons are managed carefully. Loose clothing is folded and placed where it cannot slide to the floor. Privacy also depends upon the curtain. You draw it completely across the window and secure it with a small hook. The dark fabric blocks the view from stations and neighbouring tracks. It also blocks your view of the storm, leaving only the sound of snow brushing faintly against the glass. You check the door again. Locked. The habit feels unnecessary, then comforting, then necessary again. A curious custom of sleeping car travel involves shoes left outside a compartment door. On some routes, a passenger may place them in the corridor at night, trusting the attendant to polish them before morning. You consider the idea. Leaving shoes unattended in an ordinary hallway might seem foolish. On a sleeping car, that can be a request for service. Railway manners transform an abandoned pair of shoes into a message. You keep yours inside. They are wet from the platform, and you suspect they would test the patience of even the kindest attendant. The folding table now becomes your evening desk. You place a book beneath the reading lamp and settle into the seat. The page remains still for several seconds, then begins to shake gently with the movement of the train. Your eyes learn to follow the lines. Reading on rails requires cooperation. You hold the book slightly higher when the carriage dips. You pause when the wheels become loud. You reread a sentence when a sudden jolt sends your attention toward the ceiling. The story competes with the life beyond the door. A child whispers somewhere down the corridor. A latch opens. Water runs briefly through a pipe. Someone walks past in soft slippers, moving carefully so as not to wake those already asleep. The car has its own nighttime manners. Doors are closed without slamming. Conversations become shorter. Luggage is lifted rather than dragged. Passengers who meet in the corridor turn sideways to pass, each pretending that the arrangement is perfectly spacious. You hear two travellers approach from opposite directions. Their footsteps stop. There is a polite exchange. One person retreats to a doorway, allowing the other to continue. No argument occurs. The corridor teaches diplomacy through narrowness. Historians continue to debate whether private sleeping rooms encouraged isolation or created a deeper form of shared community. A closed door offered personal space, yet every passenger depended upon common corridors, shared staff, railway schedules, and the patience of strangers. The room feels private, but never separate. You hear the train whistle through the wall. The note is softened by the distance and the metal. It reaches you as a low vibration rather than a sharp sound. A crossing bell answers somewhere outside, faint and brief. You place the book on the shelf. The cabin light seems brighter now that your eyes have grown tired. You switch off the main lamp and leave only the smaller reading light burning. Shadows gather around the folded basin and the hidden berth. Your watch rests beside the pillow shelf. You wind it slowly, listening to the tiny mechanism click beneath your fingers. Time inside the cabin feels different from time in a house. There are no household duties waiting, no street to cross, no room to clean. There is only the journey. You arrange your clothes, secure the basin, and make certain the table is properly latched. Loose objects are returned to your suitcase. Coins go back into a pocket. The paper cup is emptied so that it cannot tip during the night. Each action prepares the room for sleep. The compartment has taught you its rules. Move carefully, keep the passage quiet. Secure anything that can fall, respect the thin walls. Trust the staff. Accept that privacy aboard a train is not silence, but a collection of softened sounds shared among travellers who have agreed, for one night, to rest together while moving. A gentle knock sounds against the compartment door. You rise from the seat, turn the lock, and slide the door aside. The sleeping car attendant stands in the corridor with folded sheets balanced over one arm. A pillow rests beneath his elbow, and a dark blanket hangs in a neat square from his other hand. He asks whether you are ready for the room to be prepared. You step into the corridor and give him space. The passage feels cooler than the compartment. The train moves beneath your feet with a patient rolling motion, and the attendant adjusts his balance without looking down. He has learned the movement so completely that the swaying floor seems to belong to him. You watch through the open doorway. He begins by clearing the seat and checking every latch. The small table folds against the wall. A cushion lifts from its frame. Hidden metal supports appear beneath it, polished by years of use. He pulls one handle, presses another, and the broad daytime seat begins to change shape. The transformation is almost theatrical. What looked like an ordinary sofa separates into carefully fitted pieces. The back cushion lowers and the base extends. A narrow mattress appears from beneath the upholstery and settles across the supports. Nothing is hurried. Each movement follows a practiced order. The attendant knows which fitting may stick, which hinge needs a firm hand, and which part must be guided quietly so that the passenger in the neighbouring room does not wake. He reaches toward the panel above. Two catches release with solid clicks. The upper berth descends slowly from the wall. Supported by strong metal arms, it stops at shoulder height, forming a second bed above the first. The cabin now seems completely different. Its open daytime shape has disappeared. The room has become a small sleeping chamber, filled almost entirely by a mattress, blankets, and this narrow space needed to enter them. Sleeping car practice confirms that attendants traditionally convert private rooms during the evening and restore them for daytime use in the morning. The service allows passengers to leave for dinner or conversation and return to find chairs replaced by freshly prepared beds. The work appears simple only because it is performed well. The attendant spreads the lower sheet across the mattress and pulls it tight at each corner. The fabric lies smooth despite the motion of the train. He adds another sheet, then a wool blanket, folding the upper edge with exact care. The pillow receives a clean white case. He places it near the window, gives it one quick adjustment, and checks the reading lamp above the bed. You notice the precision of his hands. They move quickly, but not carelessly. Every fold has a purpose. Loose bedding could twist around a passenger during a rough stretch of track. A poorly secured berth could rattle through the night. Comfort depends upon details that most travellers never see being managed. A curious footnote concerns the straps fitted to some upper berths. They are not decoration. A safety belt or net may be attached along the open side to discourage a sleeping passenger from rolling into the aisle during an enthusiastic curve. You examine the narrow upper bed. It appears comfortable enough, although it also suggests that turning over should be treated as a carefully planned railway operation. The attendant tests the supports with one hand. Satisfied, he steps back. His uniform remains neat despite the physical work. Preparing beds requires bending, lifting, reaching, and balancing inside spaces barely large enough for two people to stand. He may repeat the process in room after room while answering calls and carrying water, checking tickets, and helping confused travellers find the correct door. The history behind this service is deeper than the polished fittings suggest. For generations, sleeping car porters in the United States are largely black men. They perform demanding work while facing discrimination, low wages, long hours, and passengers who sometimes refuse even to learn their names. Yet their employment also supports families, creates respected positions within many communities, and helps form networks that contribute to organised labour and the struggle for civil rights. The Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters becomes the first major black labour union to receive formal recognition from a large national labour organisation. Its members fight for better pay, rest, dignity and fair treatment in a profession built upon constant service. You look again at the attendant. His quiet skill carries the weight of that long tradition. The clean pillow and smooth blanket are not merely pleasant touches, they are the visible result of labour, discipline, and generations of workers insisting that service should never mean surrendering respect. Researchers still dispute whether sleeping car employment offered meaningful advancement or trapped workers inside a system that rewarded politeness while preserving inequality. Evidence supports both views. The jobs provide income and community standing, yet the conditions often demand exhausting patience under humiliating expectations. The train leans into a curve. The attendant places one hand against the wall and waits for the motion to ease. Then he finishes the final corner of the sheet. He shows you the ladder for the upper berth. It hooks securely into two metal slots. Each step is narrow, and the entire arrangement asks for calm feet and full attention. Climbing it in darkness would be unwise, especially after too much coffee or an ambitious dessert. You choose the lower bed. The attendant approves with a small nod, perhaps recognizing wisdom when he sees it. He folds your clothes onto a remaining shelf and places your shoes where they will not block the door. A glass of water rests inside a holder fixed to the wall. The curtain is adjusted so that no light enters from the corridor. Then he asks whether you need anything else. You say that you do not. He wishes you a peaceful night and moves to the next compartment, carrying the unused ladder with one hand. Another soft knock sounds along the corridor. Another room begins its evening transformation. You slide the door closed. The lower berth fills most of the space, leaving only a narrow strip of carpet beside it. You sit on the edge and feel the mattress respond beneath your weight. It is firm, slightly uneven, and warmer than expected. The blanket feels heavy against your fingers. You lift your feet onto the bed and stretch out carefully. The pillow shifts with the motion of the car above you. The folded upper berth forms a low ceiling, creating the protected feeling of a small cabin within the cabin. The lamp casts a quiet circle across the white sheet. Beyond the wall, the attendant continues his work. Latches click, panels lower, blankets unfold. One by one, the rooms of the sleeping car surrender their daytime shapes and become places of rest. Your bed moves steadily through the winter darkness, prepared by practiced hands and carried forward by the rails. The storm thickens until the window no longer shows a landscape. Snow strikes the glass in fast white lines, driven sideways by wind that seems determined to erase the railway itself. Trees appear only as dark smudges. Telegraph poles rise for an instant, then vanish. A signal lamp glows through the blur like a single watchful eye. You lie beneath the blanket and feel the train working harder. The motion changes. Instead of the easy rhythm of level track, the carriage begins to pull against the rails. The wheels still beat beneath you, but the sound grows deeper and more deliberate. Metal strains somewhere along the train. The locomotive sends a low vibration through the floor, steady and powerful. The train is climbing. You cannot see the slope clearly, yet your body notices it. The pillow seems to press differently beneath your head. The water in the wall holder tilts toward one side. Loose fabric shifts by the smallest amount. Outside, the land rises beneath the snow. The railway follows a grade so gentle that it might look flat to the eye, but a long train fills every rise. A locomotive must pull the weight of coaches, passengers, fuel, water, luggage, and supplies against gravity, all while the rails grow wet and slick beneath the storm. Records confirm that railway grades are carefully measured yet, because even a modest climb can greatly increase the effort required to move a heavy train. What feels like a mild slope beneath your bed may demand sustained power from the engines at the front. The wheels begin to hum. Then the sound sharpens. For a few seconds, you hear a quick, restless spinning beneath the distant locomotive. The rhythm loses its certainty, as though the engine has taken one hurried step without finding solid ground. Sand pours onto the rail. You cannot see it happen, but you imagine the dry grains falling through narrow pipes ahead, creating friction between steel wheel and steel track. The slipping stops. The pull becomes firm again. The train advances. A signal appears outside, amber through the snow. Its light grows slowly, passes the window, and disappears behind you. Another waits farther ahead, barely visible in the storm. Each signal divides the route into protected sections, telling the crew whether the track is clear, occupied by, or uncertain. In fair weather, the colours are easy to read from a distance. Tonight, snow gathers on lenses, wind scatters the light, and darkness narrows the world. The engineer watches through a windshield swept by the moving blades, searching for every indication while keeping the train under control. You picture the cab at the front. Gauges glow across the instrument panel. The engineer leans forward beneath a small lamp. The conductor carries written instructions. Wind pushes against the locomotive, and snow collects around steps, handrails, and couplings. No one in the cab can simply pull over and wait beside the road. The train must follow the rails wherever they lead. The line curves sharply. Your bed leans toward the wall, and the blanket slides several inches across your chest. The carriage joints complain with long metallic groans. Wheels press against the outer rail, producing a thin singing sound that rises above the storm. You steady yourself with one hand. The curve continues longer than expected. For a moment, you can see part of the train through the window. Several lighted cars bend across the white darkness, their windows forming a glowing arc. Snow whirls between them, hiding the front of the train. Then the line straightens and the coaches vanish from sight. Oddly enough, railway workers sometimes judge difficult winter conditions through details that passengers would never notice. Snow packed beneath equipment can freeze into heavy blocks. Ice may gather around hoses and steps. Fine powder can enter small openings and settle where it causes trouble later. The storm does not need to bury the train completely. It only needs to find the right hinge, valve, or moving part. A sudden thump sounds beneath the floor, then another. The wheels are passing through a drift. Snow thrown aside by the locomotive strikes the underside of the cars in soft, heavy bursts. The sound resembles sacks of flour falling against a cellar door. It is more surprising than dangerous. Though your imagination briefly becomes unhelpful, you pull the blanket closer. The train whistle sounds, its voice is longer here, drawn out across the hidden country. The note travels ahead into the white air, warning any worker, road traveller, or wandering animal near the line. No answering sound returns, only wind presses against the glass. The railway enters a cut between two slopes. Snow has gathered along the rock walls, forming pale shelves above the track. The train light reveals rough stone, bare branches, and narrow curtains of ice. The space feels enclosed. Wind driven over the ridge drops into the cut and swirls around the cars. Snow rises from the ground as well as falling from the sky. For several moments, every direction seems filled with motion. Historians and engineers still debate how much winter reliability depends upon machinery and how much depends upon human judgment. Better equipment can heat switches, clear snow, and improve traction, yet crews must still decide when to slow, when to stop, and when conditions remain safe enough to continue. A timetable cannot feel the rails beneath it. A machine cannot always understand the storm. The train slows. The wheel rhythm stretches into wider spaces. The steady beat becomes patient and cautious. You hear the brakes breathe through the line, followed by the faint scent of warm metal entering through the ventilation system. Ahead, a red signal glows. The train stops beneath it. For a little while, nothing moves except the snow. The carriage rests on the grey poi, with its brakes holding firmly. The engine continues to pulse at the front. Heat flows through the room. The lamp trembles almost too gently to see. You listen. A radio voice crackles somewhere beyond the wall. Too faint to understand, a door opens in the distance. Boots cross a metal floor, then silence returns. The red light remains outside, colouring the snow around it. At last, it changes. Red becomes green. The brakes release with a long sigh. Couplings tighten through the train. One car at a time, the locomotive pulls, the wheels grip, and your bed begins moving once more. The storm still owns the night, yet the train continues into it, climbing through curves and drifts guided by signals, steel, and the quiet decisions of people you may never see. Midnight settles over the train without ceremony. There is no bell to announce it, no curtain rising, no sudden change in the darkness beyond the glass. You know the hour only because the carriage has become still in a different way. Conversations have faded, doors remain closed. Even the footsteps in the corridor have grown rare. The train continues speaking. Beneath your bed, the wheels repeat their measured pattern across the rails. The sound changes with the track, sometimes quick and bright, sometimes deep and hollow. Each joint sends a small beat through the mattress. Click, pause, click, then another pair. The rhythm does not remain perfect for long. A curve stretches it, a bridge sharpens it, a section of newer rail makes it almost disappear, leaving only a low metallic hum. You lie with your eyes closed and begin separating one sound from another. The wheels are easiest. Behind them comes the steady trembling of the window frame. The glass shifts within its seal whenever the carriage leans, producing a faint dry chatter. The curtain rings answer with tiny taps against the rod. A pipe inside the wall gives a long sigh. The heating system follows with a gentle hum that rises and falls like distant wind. Warm air moves near the floor, carrying the faint scents of wool blanket, clean linen, dust, and metal warmed by hours of travel. Somewhere above you, a loose fitting vibrates. It pauses whenever the train slows, then begins again as speed returns. The sound is not loud enough to demand attention, yet it refuses to disappear completely. It becomes a small companion in the dark, a determined little buzz with excellent stamina and no respect for sleep. You shift beneath the blanket. The mattress and the quiet upspring. From the neighbouring compartment comes a cough, followed by the rustle of sheets, Farther down the car, someone turns on a faucet. Water runs briefly through the pipes, and the sound travels behind the walls before ending with a soft knock. Railway engineers understand that sound carries unusually well through connected metal structures. Vibrations travel through wheels, axles, frames, floors, walls, and couplings, allowing a noise created several cars away to seem surprisingly close. The entire train acts like a long instrument. Steel strings stretch beneath you. Every wheel plays them. The carriage door at the far end opens with a heavy click. A narrow rush of louder rail noise enters the sleeping car. You hear the metal floor plates between coaches shifting beneath careful feet. Someone crosses, the connecting door closes again, and the sound is softened. A few moments later, the attendant walks along the corridor. His steps are slow and even. He pauses near one room, answers a quiet request, and then continues. A glass touches a tray. A latch turns. A whispered thank you passes through the wall. His footsteps fade. You are surrounded by the people. Yet midnight makes every person feel distant. Each traveller rests inside a small private darkness, carried by the same engine and awakened by the same unexpected squeak. The whistle rises from the front of the train. At first it is a low vibration beneath all the other sounds. Then it opens into a long, mournful note that passes through the carriage and escapes into the winter night. A second note follows. The whistle warns a road crossing hidden somewhere beyond the curtains. It reaches houses, barns, empty streets, and anyone awake enough to hear it. Inside your berth, the sound feels both lonely and comforting. It says the train is moving. It says someone is watching the track ahead. The crossing bell begins faintly outside. Its quick metallic ringing approaches, grows clear for one instant, then drops away behind the train. A curious railway habit concerns passengers who become so accustomed to the nighttime motion that silence wakes them more quickly than noise. When a train stops at a station, the missing rhythm can feel unnatural. The body notices the absent clicking and opens its eyes, suspicious of the sudden peace. You begin to understand the noise no longer keeps you awake. It becomes the condition that allows sleep. A bridge changes everything again. The wheels strike its entrance with a sharp report. The floor begins to resonate beneath you, and the rolling sound grows wider, almost cavernous. Metal beams throw echoes back toward the car. For several seconds, it seems as though another train runs directly below yours. You hear water somewhere in the darkness. The river cannot be seen through the closed curtain, but its presence enters through the hollow space beneath the bridge. Then solid ground returns, and the sound tightens into the familiar beat of ordinary track. The train leans through a broad curve. Wheel flanges press against the rails with a high singing tone. It begins softly, rises to a thin cry, and fades as the line straightens. Researchers continue to disagree over whether repetitive mechanical sound naturally calms the human mind or whether travellers simply learn to associate it with safety and rest. Some emphasize rhythm and predictability. Others point toward memory, suggesting that comfort grows from repeated journeys and familiar sensations. You do not need to choose. The result is the same. The sounds gather around you without asking anything in return. The wheels count miles you do not need to measure. The pipes carry warmth you do not need to manage. The whistle guards crossings you never see. The couplings absorb every pull and push between the cars, occasionally tightening with a dull knock that passes along the train like a message moving from room to room. A spoon falls somewhere in the dining car. The tiny clang travels in a astonishing distance. You smile into the darkness, imagining a sleepy employee finding it beneath a table and wondering how one small object can make such a grand announcement at midnight. The train begins moving over smoother rail. The sharp clicks become softer. The window quiets. Even the persistent fitting above your head grows still for several precious seconds. Your breathing settles into the rhythm. In, out, the wheels answer beneath you. Your thoughts loosen. The room becomes less distinct. The lamp is dark and the curtain is closed, and the hidden countryside passes without demanding to be seen. Only sound remains, a distant whistle, a soft turning wheel, a faint hum in the wall, and the long, patient voice of the train carrying you through midnight. You wake because the train has become quiet. The familiar movement has vanished beneath you. The mattress lies still, no wheel rhythm travels through the frame, and no gentle sway moves the curtain against the wall. For several seconds, you remain beneath the blanket, uncertain whether the silence belongs to the railway or to a dream. Then a distant door closes. The sound is clear and solitary. You open your eyes. A pale glow surrounds the edges of the curtain. It is not yet daylight, but the darkness has softened into the deep blue of early morning. The small clock beside the berth shows an hour when sensible people are still asleep and railway workers are already wearing heavy coats. You lift the curtain by a few inches. A station platform waits outside. Fresh snow covers nearly everything. It rests along the platform roof, fills the spaces between wooden boards, and gathers on the benches in smooth white layers. No footprints cross the open ground near your window. The station appears untouched, as though it has been built during the night and forgotten before anyone could use it. One lamp hangs beneath the roof. Its yellow light falls upon a wooden baggage cart, a metal waste bin, and a timetable case fixed to the wall. Snow moves through the beam in slow circles. The flakes are smaller now, drifting rather than racing. You press your face closer to the glass. The station building is modest, made of dark brick with pale stone around the windows. A narrow canopy stretches along the track. Behind the glass doors, the waiting room glows dimly. Rows of wooden benches stand empty beneath a clock. A ticket clerk sits behind a window reading a newspaper. He turns one page, looks toward the train, and returns to his reading. The station clock shows a few minutes before 5. You wonder what town lies beyond the building. No tall structures rise behind it. You see only the roofs of small houses, a church tower, and several bare trees carrying snow along every branch. A road passes the station entrance, but no automobiles move along it. The town is sleeping while the train pauses at its edge. A railway station in the early hours is a place between purposes. During the day, it belongs to arrivals, luggage, greetings, and hurried farewells. At this hour, it belongs to lamps, clocks, and the few people responsible for keeping travel possible while everyone else rests. A porter appears beneath the canopy. He wears a heavy coat and pushes a handcart through the snow. Its narrow wheels make 2 clean lines across the platform. 3 canvas mail bags rest on the cart, each marked with a paper label. Postal records confirm that passenger trains once carried large amounts of mail across the country. Railway mail service allowed clerks to sort letters while trains moved between cities, turning certain cars into the travelling post offices. By 1971, much of that work is disappearing. Air transport and highway trucks increasingly carry the mail, and specialised railway postal routes are being reduced. Still, bags and parcels continue to move through many stations, especially where the train remains an important connection to distant places. The porter stops beside a baggage door. A railway employee inside the car lowers 2 parcels onto the cart. They work without conversation, using gestures made familiar by repetition. One package is long and narrow, another is tied with heavy cord. Oddly enough, lavsaitis, sometimes transported through railway express services in ventilated boxes. Their faint peeping can surprise passengers waiting on the quiet platforms, especially when the boxes appear to be ordinary luggage with unusually strong opinions. No chicks announced themselves this morning. Only the cartwheels squeak as the porter turns toward the station. A woman steps from the waiting room. She wears a green coat and holds the hand of a young boy carrying a small suitcase. They stand beneath the canopy, looking along the train for the correct car. The child appears fully awake, either from excitement or from the mysterious energy available only to children before sunrise. A conductor walks toward them. He checks their tickets, points toward a coach farther back, and lifts the boy's suitcase with one hand. The child looks up at the sleeping car windows. For an instant, his eyes meet yours. You let the curtain fall slightly. There is something trendy about being seen while lying in bed at a station. The room may feel private, but the platform remains only a few feet away. A person waiting beneath a lamp can look directly into your temporary bedroom unless the curtain has been arranged with care. You secure it more firmly, leaving a narrow opening at the side. The stillness allows you to hear details normally hidden by motion. Steam hisses near the front of the train. A shovel scrapes against the platform. The station door opens with a squeak, then closes under the pull of a strong spring. Somewhere beyond the roof, a church bell sounds 5 slow notes. The final note fades into the snow. Historians remain uncertain about whether small railway stations created stronger local communities or merely reflected connections that already existed. Some argue that the station became a shared civic centre, where news, visitors, goods, and opportunity entered town. Others suggest its importance depended entirely upon larger economic forces beyond local control. From your window, the building seems to hold both meanings. It belongs to this sleeping town, yet every rail beside it leads elsewhere. A man in work clothes crosses the platform carrying a metal lunch pail. He boards near the front without assistance. Perhaps he travels only a few stops. Perhaps he has made the same morning journey for years. Another passenger leaves the train. She descends carefully, carrying a handbag and a wrapped parcel. An older man waits beneath the canopy. When he sees her, his face brightens. He steps forward, takes the parcel, and touches her shoulder with one gloved hand. Their reunion is quiet. No one waves dramatically. No one calls across the platform. They simply walk together toward the waiting room while snow settles behind them. The conductor checks his watch and he raises a lantern. The station door opens once more, and the ticket clerk steps outside. He stands beneath the roof with his hands in his pockets, watching the length of the train. A bell sounds near the locomotive. The brakes release with a long, gentle breath. The platform begins to move. The baggage cart passes slowly from view. The lamp slides across the window. The waiting room reveals its empty benches one final time. Then the brick wall gives way to snow-covered houses and dark gardens. The station clock disappears behind the last edge of the roof. Motion returns to the mattress. The wheels find the rails again, softly at first, then with growing confidence. The quiet town recedes into the blue morning, leaving only 2 fresh lines from a baggage cart and a few footprints slowly filling with snow. Morning enters the train as a thin silver light. You sit up beneath the blanket and notice that the darkness around the curtain has changed. The fabric no longer hides a black window. Pale brightness presses through it, soft and cool, as though dawn is waiting politely outside the glass. You dress slowly while the carriage moves. The floor tilts beneath your feet. Buttons require patience. One sock attempts to escape beneath the berth, but you recover it with the dignity expected of a traveller who has survived both winter weather and railway plumbing. The corridor is quiet when you open the door. Several compartments remain closed. Behind one, a passenger snores with impressive confidence. Behind another, water runs into a folding basin. The air carries the scents of soap, wool, warm metal, and coffee drifting from somewhere farther along the train. That final scent makes the decision for you. You walk toward the dining car. The connecting passages feel colder in the morning. Frost traces the edges of the outer doors, and each crossing between coaches brings a sudden roar from the wheels below. You hold the rail, step across the moving floor plates, and enter the next car with your balance mostly intact. A few passengers sit awake in the lounge. One man reads a newspaper beneath a lamp. A woman watches the passing countryside with both hands wrapped around a cup. Another traveller sleeps in a chair with his hat tilted over his eyes, having apparently decided that beds are unnecessary when stubbornness is available. The dining car glows warmly ahead. Breakfast service is less formal than dinner, but it has its own quiet grace. White cloths still cover the tables, cups rest upside down on saucers, small jars of preserves wait beside sugar bowls. Steam clouds the kitchen window each time the swinging door opens. A steward leads you to a table beside the glass. You share it with a nurse travelling home after visiting relatives and a salesman carrying a case filled with fabric samples. Both speak softly, their voices still shaped by the early hour. The menu offers eggs, bacon, sausage, toast, oatmeal, fruit, and pancakes. You choose eggs with toast and potatoes, along with coffee strong enough to negotiate with the weather. The steward pours it immediately. The first warmth reaches your hands through the thick cup. The second arrives with the scent. The third comes with the taste, dark and slightly bitter, followed by a generous spoonful of sugar. Outside, the world begins to reveal itself. Snow-covered fields stretch beneath a pale sky. Fence posts rise in straight lines from the drifts. Frozen ponds reflect the weak morning light, their surfaces smooth except where wind has pushed powder into narrow ridges. Farmhouses appear among bare trees. Smoke rises from chimneys and drifts sideways. Barn roofs carry heavy white layers. Cattle stand close together near wooden sheds, their dark shapes almost motionless against the snow. A farmer drives a tractor along a narrow lane, clearing a path toward the road. He pauses as the train passes and lifts one arm. You raise your hand toward the glass, though he cannot possibly know whether anyone answers. Breakfast arrives on a warm plate. The eggs are soft, the potatoes crisp around the edges, and the toast rests beneath a folded paper cover to preserve its heat. A small dish of orange marmalade shines like captured sunlight beside the plate. Dining car manuals from the middle of the 20th century show that breakfast service is carefully timed around station stops and passenger routines. Crews must prepare food for travellers who wake at different hours while keeping tables moving efficiently in a narrow room. The result feels relaxed, though the kitchen behind the door is anything but idle. Pans strike metal surfaces. A bell rings. A cook calls an order. Plates move through the serving window with remarkable speed. You spread marmalade across the toast while the train rounds a broad curve. The bright preserve slides toward one edge, pauses, and settles safely. You learn that railway breakfast rewards a steady wrist. Oddly enough, some experienced travellers claim that coffee tastes better on a train because the constant motion stirs it without assistance. This may not satisfy a laboratory, but it does save effort, and that is surely one of civilization's quieter achievements. The nurse describes a hospital near her home. The salesman explains that he visits clothing shops across several states. His sample case contains squares of wool in grey, brown, green, and blue. He opens it just enough to show the neat rows, then closes it when the train sways. Conversation moves easily between strangers at breakfast. No one expects lifelong friendship. No one asks for the grand confessions. You speak about weather, work, towns along the route, and whether the potatoes are better with pepper. Such small talk has a purpose. It allows travellers to share a table without entering one another's private worlds too deeply. For half an hour, you form a temporary household, passing sugar, offering toast, and warning one another when a cup begins to slide. Beyond the window, the fields begin to change. Low hills rise beneath the snow, streams twist between wooded banks. The sky brightens from grey to pearl, and distant ridges appear through the thinning storm. A group of deer stands near the edge of a forest. They lift their heads as the train approaches, then bound into the trees, leaving brief marks across the snow. The salesman misses them because he is buttering toast. This seems unfair, though history is filled with people looking down at precisely the wrong moment. Scholars continue to disagree about whether dining cars created genuine social equality or only the appearance of it. Shared tables brought strangers together, yet access, price, custom, and discrimination often determined who received comfort and welcome. The white cloth may look democratic. The society surrounding it is not always so simple. You consider this while the steward refills your cup. The nurse finishes her fruit. The salesman checks his watch, The room grows brighter with every mile, and reflections fade from the windows until the landscape becomes clearer than the passengers inside. You take the final sip of coffee. Its warmth lingers as the train moves through open country, carrying the dining car into full morning. Snow still covers the land, but the clouds have lifted slightly, revealing hills, farms, frozen streams, and a southern horizon beginning to gather colour. The white fields begin to loosen their grip upon the land. You sit beside the window as the train moves southward, watching the snow change from a deep, unbroken covering into scattered patches beneath trees and along shaded fences. Brown grass appears between the drifts. Dark soil shows through on the warmer slopes. Water runs beneath thin shelves of ice, carrying small branches around stones polished by years of current. The sky remains pale, yet the light feels softer. Farmhouses stand farther apart now. Their roofs are steep, their chimneys narrow, and their porches face roads that wind rather than travel in straight lines. The broad Northwestern fields give way to smaller plots fitted between hills. A red barn rests against a wooded hoe. Nearby, a line of washing hangs beneath a porch roof despite the cold. Shirts and towels remain stiff in the morning air, moving only when the wind reaches them. A dog runs along the fence as the train passes, barking with great determination at several hundred tons of steel. The dog does not win. The railway bends beside a shallow river. Its water is clear enough to reveal pale stones beneath the surface. Snow lies along the banks, but moss remains green on fallen logs. Bare branches lean over the current, their tips almost touching the water. You feel the carriage lean into another curve. The landscape is no longer something the train crosses in a straight line. It begins guiding the railway, forcing it to follow valleys, river banks, and narrow openings between hills. The engine cannot command the land, it must negotiate with it. Surveying records show that many railways through the Appalachian region follow rivers because watercourses often provide the gentlest available path through rugged country. Even then, engineers must build bridges, cut through rock, and shape long curves around slopes that resist easy passage. You see evidence of that labour everywhere. Stone walls support the track above the river. Narrow tunnels open in distant hillsides. Wooden trestles carry smaller roads over creeks. Telegraph wires dip between poles and rise again, tracing the railway like a loose black thread. A village appears around a bend. Its main street runs parallel to the tracks. A grocery shop, a barber shop, a church, and a small post office face the railway from behind a row of parked automobiles. Hand-painted signs hang above several doors. People pause when the train passes. A shopkeeper stands outside sweeping wet snow from his steps. 2 children wait near a school bus with their collars turned up. A woman carrying a paper bag stops beside the post office and watches the silver coaches move through town. The train does not stop. It offers only a whistle, a brief view of warm windows, and a rush of wind that lifts loose snow from the platform. The town disappears almost immediately. Beyond it, the hills rise higher. Forest close around the railway, dense with oak, maple, pine, and hemlock. Most branches remain bare, yet dark evergreen trees hold their colour beneath the winter sky. Their needles carry small caps of snow that fall in sudden showers whenever the wind disturbs them. The scent of coal smoke enters faintly through the ventilation system. You notice small houses along the valley floor, some built close to the track. Wood is stacked beside porches, tin roofs reflect the weak sun, laundry lines stretch between trees, and old trucks rest beside sheds with their hoods raised. Life here seems arranged around the shape of the mountains. Roads curve. Gardens occupy whatever level ground can be found. Houses face creeks because the valleys leave little room for anything else. A curious local practice appears in the small vegetable plots beside several homes. Gardeners sometimes place dark stones around tender plants because the stones absorb warmth during the day and release it slowly after sunset. It is a humble form of heating. though the stones remain less demanding than a furnace and considerably quieter. The snow becomes thinner with every mile. It gathers now only beneath trees, beside fences, and in narrow hollows where sunlight struggles to reach. The river runs freely, water drips from rock ledges, icicles shorten under the growing warmth, sending bright drops onto the stones below. You remove one layer of clothing, the compartment feels almost too warm, and the window has begun to fog near the corners. You wipe a clear circle in the glass with your sleeve. A freight train waits on a siding ahead. Its long line of coal cars stands motionless beneath a signal. The cars are dark and open at the top, each one filled with black stone from mines hidden somewhere beyond the ridges. Your train passes slowly beside it. For several minutes, the view consists of steel wheels, heavy springs, rusted ladders, and coal piled in uneven mounds. A brakeman stands near the final car, holding a lantern despite the daylight. He watches your coaches pass, then lifts two fingers in greeting. Coal has shaped many communities across the Appalachian region. Mines provide employment, fuel factories, heat homes, and feed the growing appetite of industry. They also bring danger, unstable wages, damaged landscapes, and dependence upon companies that may control housing, shops, and local politics. Arguments divide historians over whether railway expansion brought mountain communities into greater prosperity or bound them more tightly to outside owners seeking timber, coal, and profit. The tracks create access to markets and jobs, yet they also allow enormous quantities of natural wealth to leave the region. The rails carry opportunity in both directions. They do not distribute it equally. The freight train ends, and the valley opens again. A schoolhouse stands on a hillside above the river. Children in coats gather near the fence, pointing toward the passing sleeper. One waves both arms, another runs alongside the track for several seconds before falling behind. You wave through the glass. The train rounds another curve, and the school disappears behind trees. The hills now form long blue layers across the southern horizon. Each ridge rises behind another, darker in the foreground and softer in the distance. Mist rests between them, pale as smoke. The name Smoky Mountains begins to feel less like a destination and more like a description unfolding before your eyes. The train follows the valley deeper into the rising country. Its wheels strike bridges, cross narrow roads, and echo beneath stone cliffs. Villages grow smaller, forests grow the retreats into shaded pockets while streams run faster beside the track. You watch the land changing with quiet patience. Nothing announces the transformation. The country simply becomes steeper, warmer, narrower, and more intimate, one curve at a time. A man with silver hair settles into the lounge chair across from you. He carries no newspaper and opens no book. Instead, he watches the river outside with the concentration of someone reading a familiar page. His hands rest upon a wooden walking stick, and one thumb moves slowly across the polished handle. When the train enters a long curve, he smiles. He tells you that he once worked along these tracks. His voice is low and measured, shaped by years of speaking above engines, tools, wind, and warning bells. He began as a young labourer, replacing worn ties and tightening bolts beneath summer heat. Later, he worked as a brakeman, walking beside freight cars with a lantern while mountain fog covered the yard. You listen as forest and rock move past the glass. He remembers cold mornings when metal tools stuck to damp gloves. He remembers carrying oil cans between locomotives and learning which machines complained honestly and which remained quiet until something broke. Railway workers often learn through sound. A healthy wheel produces one note. A damaged bearing produces another. A loose fitting may whisper for miles before becoming dangerous. The old worker says that experienced crews could hear trouble beneath ordinary noise. They listened while walking beside moving cars, tapping wheels with small hammers and judging the reply. Historical records confirm that railways employed large communities across the Appalachian region, including engineers, firemen, conductors, station agents, track crews, telegraph operators, cooks, cleaners, and shop workers, a train depended upon far more people than those visible to passengers. The line itself required constant care. Rain loosened soil, winter split stone, floods damaged bridges. Vegetation crowded to the track whenever crews allowed it. The railway was never completed in any final sense. It had to be built again each morning through inspection, repair, and attention. The old worker remembers wartime trains most clearly. During the great global conflict of the 1940s, troop trains crossed the country carrying young service members toward camps, ports, and uncertain futures. Stations filled with families bringing sandwiches, letters, knitted scarves, and more advice than any departing person could reasonably carry. Passenger cars were crowded. Sleeping space was scarce. People rested in seats, corridors, and any corner that offered a few inches of peace. He was a boy then, standing beside his mother on a platform while soldiers leaned from open windows. Local women brought jars of preserves and paper bags filled with biscuits. Children offered magazines already read many times. No one knew which small kindness would be remembered. One soldier gave him a military button that had come loose from a coat. The old worker still keeps it in a drawer at home, though he cannot recall the soldier's name. A curious wartime custom appeared at some stations where volunteers placed signs announcing free coffee for service members. The coffee was occasionally so weak that travellers joked the cup needed encouragement. Still, it was hot, and warmth offered at 4 a.m. rarely receives harsh criticism. The train passes a weathered platform beside an abandoned depot. Boards cover the windows. Weeds rise through cracks near the freight door. A faded sign remains beneath the roof, though several letters have peeled away. The old worker points toward it. Passenger trains once stopped there each day. Families gathered beneath the canopy to welcome sons, daughters, cousins, and grandparents. A station agent carried messages from the telegraph office. Children waited for relatives they recognized only from photographs. Reunions had their own rhythm. First came the whistle, then the distant smoke. People stood from benches, adjusted hats, and searched every passing window. The train stopped with brakes sighing, doors opened, steps lowered, and suddenly the platform filled with embraces, luggage, questions, and tears quickly hidden behind smiles. A grandmother might arrive, carrying 2 heavy cases and a cake wrapped in cloth. A college student might return with new clothes, new opinions, and exactly the same childhood appetite. A soldier might step down thinner than remembered. The station gave each returner a stage. Arguments remain unsettled over whether rail travel truly strengthened family connections or merely made growing distances easier to endure. Some historians emphasize how trains allowed migration, while preserving visits and correspondence. Others note that railway expansion encouraged younger generations to leave small communities permanently. The track carried people home. It also carried them away. The old worker names several passenger services that no longer run through these valleys. Their titles once appeared in advertisements, painted on station boards and printed across elegant timetables. Some offered dining cars and sleeping berths. Others consisted of only a few coaches behind a mail car and locomotive. One train served mill towns along the river. Another connected mining settlements with a larger city. A slow local stopped wherever passengers or parcels waited, sometimes pausing beside platforms no longer visible beneath weeds. As automobiles became common and roads improved, ridership declined. Families preferred leaving at their chosen hour. Buses reached places without tracks. Airlines claimed travellers who valued speed. Railway companies shortened routes, reduced frequency, and finally removed trains that had served communities for generations. The last departures were often quiet. There might be speeches, photographs, and a small crowd gathered beneath the station clock. Then the conductor called for boarding, the whistle sounded, and the final passenger car rolled away. The rails remained. The service did not. You look through the window at houses scattered along the valley. Some stand near abandoned track beds now covered by grass. Stone bridge supports rise beside streams without rails above them. An old water tower leans near a sawmill, its tank empty and its ladder rusting. These remnants make the landscape feel crowded with invisible journeys. You can almost picture a station lamp shining where only bushes grows. You can almost hear a porter calling a town name into the evening. The old worker falls silent as the train passes another closed depot. Its roof sags under wet snow, but the platform edge remains straight beside the track. He watches until it disappears. Then he tells you that people often remember locomotives and famous routes, but workers remember faces, a mother searching every window, a child holding a paper ticket too tightly, a young man returning in uniform, a station agent locking the office for the final time. The railway carries these lives without recording most of them. Timetables preserve arrivals and departures, but not the hand held through a window, the lunch packed in a tin, or the promise shouted as the train begins to move. Outside, the valley narrows. The old worker closes his eyes, and the walking stick rests against his knee. You continue watching the tracks, seeing not only steel and stone, but thousands of ordinary farewells still travelling quietly beside them. The valley gathers more tightly around the train. You sit close to the window as the rails follow a cold river into higher country. Water flashes between bare branches, dark and quick beneath ledges of snow. The current bends around stones, slips beneath fallen trees, and gathers into small pools where the surface reflects the grey winter sky. The train follows every turn. One moment, the river runs beside your window. The next, it disappears beneath the track and returns on the opposite side. Short bridges carry you across it again and again, each crossing producing a brief hollow thunder beneath the carriage. The hills rise into ridges. Their lower slopes are covered with brown leaves, exposed rock, and scattered snow. Higher up, evergreens deepen the colour of the forest. Mist rests among the upper branches, hiding the summits and giving the mountains their soft, smoky appearance. You feel the climb through the floor. The locomotive pulls with a steady force, and the coaches respond with small movements through the couplings. The train does not rush. It measures the grade carefully, entering each curve at a patient speed. The whistle sounds against a stone wall. Its voice returns a moment later as an echo, softer and slightly altered. A second ridge answers from farther away. For several seconds, the valley seems filled with invisible trains calling to one another through the mist. The track approaches a rocky cut. Tall walls rise on both sides, rough and close enough for you to see cracks filled with ice. Small trees grow from narrow shelves where almost no soil appears to exist. Their roots twist through stone with the stubborn confidence of plants that have never heard of sensible gardening. Snow slides from a branch and bursts against the window. You blink, then smile. The mountain has made its small announcement. Engineering records show that railway builders in the Appalachian region often followed river valleys to avoid the steepest slopes. Even so, crews had to carve cuts through rock, build bridges across streams, and create long curves that allowed heavy trains to gain elevation gradually. The work required surveying, drilling, blasting, lifting, and endless repair. A route that appears natural from your seat is not natural at all. It is a narrow agreement between machinery and geography, maintained by people who understand that mountains do not forgive careless construction. The rocky walls fall away. A wooden bridge appears ahead, carrying the line across a narrow gorge. Its dark supports rise from the riverbank in a repeating pattern. Snow rests along the upper beams, while the water below moves through shadow. The wheels enter the bridge. The sound grows broad and resonant. You look downward and see the river far beneath you, twisting between stones and winter trees. The view lasts only a few seconds, but the height makes those seconds feel longer. On the far side, the train enters another curve. You can see several coaches ahead, their silver sides bending around the slope. The locomotive remains hidden, but a grey plume rises beyond the trees and drifts across the valley. The scene feels grand without being loud. There are no wide plains here, no endless straight track. Everything is folded, layered, and partly concealed. The river hides beneath branches. The ridges overlap. Roads disappear around cliffs. Even the sky is divided into narrow openings between mountains. You pass a group of railway workers beside the line. They wear heavy jackets and stand near a small maintenance vehicle. One holds a long tool against the rail. Another checks bolts along a joint. Their work seems exposed and lonely, surrounded by cold stone and moving water. The conductor has reduced the train's speed. As you pass, the workers step back and raise their hands. Their faces remain calm. They know the train, the curve, and the precise distance required for safety. A peculiar habit among mountain travellers is counting tunnels. Children do it for entertainment. Adults pretend not to, then quietly continue the count after everyone else has stopped. A forgotten number can cause surprisingly serious disagreement, proving once again that civilization rests upon fragile foundations. A tunnel mouth appears ahead. It's cut directly into the hillside, framed by dark stones stained with water. The opening grows until it fills the front view, and the first coaches disappear inside. Your window goes black. The train sounds different underground. The wheels strike the rails with sharp echoes. The carriage roof hums. Every small rattle becomes larger, as though the tunnel has collected the train's noises and returned them all at once. Dim lamps along the wall flash past. Water glistens on the stone. You can smell damp rock through the ventilation system, mixed with warm metal and a trace of engine exhaust. Then daylight returns suddenly. The train emerges onto a shelf above the river, and the mountains open around you. Ridge after ridge rises beneath the clouds, each one softer and bluer than the last. The storm has become lighter here. Snow still clings to shaded slopes, but lower branches drip steadily. Thin streams run down the rock face beside the track. Icicles hang beneath ledges, clear and bright where sunlight reaches them. You place one hand against the window. The glass remains cold. Below, the river narrows into rapids. White water breaks around boulders, sending spray into the air. A footbridge crosses between two wooded banks, its boards shining with moisture. No road appears beside the railway now. For a while, the train seems to possess the valley alone. Historians continue to argue over whether railways created the first broad public fascination with mountain scenery, or simply made an existing admiration easier to express. Trains certainly carried visitors into places that had once required difficult travel, yet local communities had understood the beauty of these ridges long before tourists arrived, with cameras and unsuitable shoes. The distinction matters. A landscape does not begin when outsiders discover it. The railway rounds another bend and passes a small flag stop beside the river. There is no large station, only a shelter, a bench, and a sign fixed to two posts. A man waits beneath the roof with a canvas bag at his feet. The train slows but does not buzzer. He is waiting for another service, another hour, another purpose. The shelter slips away behind trees. Higher slopes now close around the line. The forest darkens with a pine and hemlock. Moss covers stones near the water. Mountain laurel forms thick green patches beneath bare hardwoods. The train moves carefully through this narrow world of bridges, cuts, tunnels, and river bends. Each mile feels earned. Each curve reveals another ridge. You rest your head against the seat and watch the cold river remain beside you, guiding the train deeper into the mist-covered mountains with the quiet patience of water that has known the way for centuries. The train loses speed so gradually that you first notice the silence between the wheel beats. The steady rhythm stretches apart. The carriage gives one last gentle sway, then settles beneath you. Outside the window, snow moves across the mountains in pale curtains. The river beside the track disappears behind blowing white, and the trees become faint grey shapes. The train has stopped. You wait for the usual release of brakes, but none comes. The heating system continues to hum, and the lamps remain warm. Somewhere along the train, a door opens and closes. Then a calm voice explains that heavy snow has covered a section of track ahead and a railway crew is inspecting the line. There is no cause for alarm. There is also no clear promise of immediate movement. You remain beside the window for several minutes, watching snow gather along the lower edge of the glass. The flakes arrive quietly, but their numbers are impressive. A branch bends beneath the growing weight. Powder drifts across the rails until the dark steel becomes difficult to see. The pause changes the mood inside the train. Passengers begin leaving their private rooms, drawn into the corridor by curiosity. Doors slide open one by one. Faces appear. Questions pass in soft voices. How long will the delay last? Is the track blocked? Will the dining car remain open? That final question seems to concern everyone equally. You walk toward the lounge, where several travellers have already gathered. Coats hang loosely over chair backs. Cups of coffee and tea rest on small tables. The broad windows show little beyond swirling snow and the shadow of the mountain slope. The school teacher sits near the centre of the car with a deck of playing cards. The older railway worker occupies the chair beside her. A young couple shares a plate of biscuits purchased at a station, while a mother tries to persuade her son that the train has stopped for practical reasons rather than for his personal entertainment. You take an empty seat. The attendant enters carrying a tray of hot drinks. His expression remains composed. He explains that a maintenance crew is clearing packed snow from a switch and checking for fallen branches farther along the line. Railway practice requires crews to inspect track whenever weather may have damaged signals, switches, bridges, or the ground beneath the rails. Trains must sometimes wait until workers confirm that the route is safe. A delay may frustrate passengers, but moving blindly into uncertain conditions would be far less charming. No one argues with that. The attendant pours coffee for several passengers and hot water for tea. The cups are plain and the portions modest, and the warmth immediately welcome. You wrap both hands around your cup. The lounge becomes a small winter shelter. Conversation begins with complaints, but they are gentle complaints, softened by the comfort, and the knowledge that no passenger can personally shovel the mountain. One man checks his watch 3 times in a minute. The older railway worker tells him that the train will not move faster if observed closely. The man considers this advice. He checks the watch again. A game of cards begins at the central table. You join the school teacher, the railway worker, and a woman travelling with a round hat box. The table is narrow, so everyone must keep elbows close. The train remains still, making the cards unusually easy to manage. The school teacher deals with quick, practiced hands. The older worker claims that he has forgotten the rules, then wins the first round without difficulty. You accuse him of selective memory. He says railway employment trained him to remember only useful things. A curious footnote of winter travel concerns emergency food stored aboard some passenger trains. Crackers, canned goods, coffee, and basic supplies may be carried in case weather or mechanical trouble extends a journey. The menu may not inspire poetry, but hunger has often improved the reputation of a plain cracker. The kitchen still has proper food, however. A steward appears with a basket of warm rolls and small dishes of butter. The passengers receive them with greater excitement than the rolls probably deserve. One child announces that the delay is now excellent. His mother asks him to reserve judgment. Outside, 2 railway workers move along the track. They wear bright coats and carry shovels. Snow reaches above their boots. One clears the points of a switch while the other examines the rail with a lantern, even though daylight remains. Their movements are careful and steady. The work seems slow because it must be correct. You watch them disappear into the blowing snow, then return a few minutes later. One raises an arm toward the locomotive. A reply sounds from the whistle, short and low. Scholars disagree over whether travel delays create stronger temporary communities or simply force strangers to tolerate one another. Some describe shared inconvenience as a form of social bonding. Others point out that patience often depends upon warm drinks, available seats, and a reasonable belief that someone competent is solving the problem. Both ideas are visible around you. The delay has not turned everyone into lifelong friends. It has, however, encouraged people to share food, stories, and the occasional unkind opinion about railway coffee. The young couple offers biscuits around the room. The woman with the hat box reveals that the box contains no hat at all. It holds a fruitcake wrapped in cloth, intended for her sister. She refuses to open it, explaining that family peace depends upon its safe arrival. Someone asks whether fruitcake can actually be damaged. She replies that this one could probably damage the train. Laughter moves through the lounge. The sound feels especially warm against the white silence outside. The card game continues. You lose one round, win another, and become suspicious of the schoolteacher, whose gentle smile appears whenever she holds an excellent hand. Time passes without feeling entirely wasted. Snow settles on the window ledge. Steam rises from cups. A passenger begins humming under his breath until his wife touches his sleeve and then, humming quietly, retires. At last, the brakes breathe through the train. The sound travels beneath the floor like a long exhalation. Passengers look toward the windows. The railway workers step away from the track and raise their lanterns. A voice announces that the line is clear. Cards are gathered. Cups are collected. Coats return to shoulders. People stand slowly, reluctant to break the small companionship created by the pause. The locomotive pulls. Couplings tighten from car to car, snow falls from the roof in soft sheets. The wheels turn, they hesitate, and then grip the rails. The train begins moving through the cleared switch. You watch the workers pass beside the window. One lifts a gloved hand, and several passengers wave in return. The storm continues, but the delay has given it a different meaning. It is no longer only an obstacle beyond the glass. It has become the reason strangers share bread, cards, laughter, and a quiet hour together while the mountains wait. The clouds hang low enough to touch the ridges. You stand beside the window as the train descends through a valley wrapped in pale mist. Mountain slopes rise on both sides, dark with evergreens and bare winter trees. Snow remains on the highest ground, but rain has washed the lower branches clean, leaving every trunk deep brown and every stone bright with water. The river widens beside the track. Small farms appear along its banks, each one fitted carefully into a narrow piece of level land. Smoke rises from chimneys and disappears into the clouds. Barn doors stand open. Horses lower their heads beside wooden fences, their breath forming white clouds in the cold air. The train moves slowly now. Its whistle sounds near a crossing, and this note travels into the mountains with a gentle echo. A road appears beside the railway, carrying a few automobiles towards a town hidden beyond the next bend. Then rooftops begin gathering along the valley. First comes a sawmill with stacks of fresh timber beneath long sheds, then a row of houses, a service station, and a church with a white tower rising above wet trees. Signs appear beside the road, advertising rooms, meals, fuel, and handmade mountain goods. You gather your belongings. The sleeping compartment feels smaller once your suitcase rests opened on the seat. You fold your clothes, place the paper tickets safely inside your coat, and check the shelves for anything forgotten. A coin hides near the wall. You retrieve it just before it can begin a new life as railway property. The attendant appears in the corridor and announces that the station is near. He moves from room to room, helping passengers with luggage and answering questions about local transportation. Doors slide open. Travellers emerge wearing coats, hats, and expressions of mild confusion. Everyone seems to own more luggage than they remember carrying aboard. Suitcases fill the corridor. A hat box appears above one shoulder. A child holds a toy locomotive in one hand and a mitten in the other. You join the careful procession toward the exit. The train enters the station yard. Several tracks run beside low warehouses and maintenance sheds. Freight cars stand on sidings with rain shining across their metal sides. A worker walks between them carrying a lantern, though the morning's already bright. The station appears beneath a long canopy. It is built of brick and stone, with broad windows facing the tracks. A sign displays the town name in large dark letters. Beneath it, families wait in coats while porters arrange baggage carts near the platform edge. The Great Smoky Mountains form part of the Appalachian Range and rise along the border between Tennessee and North Carolina. Their famous blue haze comes partly from moisture and natural substances released by the dense forests, which scatter light across the ridges. From the train window, the effect seems almost magical. Each distant slope appears lighter than the one in front of it. The nearest ridge is green and brown, the next is blue-grey, the farthest is little more than a soft shape inside the clouds. The brakes begin to hold. A long metallic sigh moves beneath the cars. The wheels turn more slowly, clicking across switches and junctions. Platform lamps pass the window, followed by benches, baggage carts, and waiting faces. The train stops with one final gentle movement. For a moment, everyone remains still. Then the doors open. Cold mountain air enters the passage. It smells of wet wood, stone, smoke, and pine. The scent is clean and sharp after the enclosed warmth of the train. You descend the metal steps carefully. Your shoes meet the platform, and the station roof shelters you from a light fall of snow mixed with rain. Water drips steadily from the canopy. The locomotive stands farther ahead, breathing warm exhaust into the cold morning. Passengers gather around you. The older woman with the hat box is greeted by a sister who immediately asks whether the fruitcake survived. The young schoolteacher waves toward a waiting family. A businessman searches for someone holding his name on a card, though no such person appears willing to admit responsibility. Porters move luggage onto carts. The sleeping car attendant stands beside the door, offering a hand to each person descending. His uniform remains neat despite the long night. When your turn comes, he steadies your suitcase and wishes you a pleasant stay in the mountains. You thank him. The exchange is brief but sincere. A curious mountain custom involves weather forecasting through natural signs. Some residents watch the thickness of animal coats, the height of hornet nests, or the bands on certain caterpillars to predict the severity of winter. The methods may not satisfy modern science. They do, however, offer better conversation than staring silently at a thermometer. Beyond the station, the town climbs gently toward the hills. Shop windows glow along the main street. A cafe sends the smell of bacon and coffee through an opening door. A taxi waits near the curb, its driver leaning against the hood with both hands around a warm cup. You remain on the platform for another moment. The train seems larger from the ground. Its silver cars stretch beneath the canopy, marked by road salt, snow, and the long passage through winter weather. Curtains move in several windows as passengers preparing to continue their journey look outside. Historians still debate whether tourism protects mountain regions by valuing their beauty, or threatens them by turning living communities into scenery for visitors. Parks and travellers bring money, roads, and public attention. They can also increase development, raise costs, and reduce old ways of life to charming displays. The mountains offer no simple answer. They stand beyond the station, quiet beneath the clouds. A bell rings near the locomotive. Passengers remaining aboard lean toward their windows. Railway workers close the doors and step away from the cars. The conductor lifts one arm. The engine pulls. The train begins moving with slow dignity. One car passes, then another. The dining car windows slide by, followed by the lounge and the sleeper, where the narrow berth carried you through the night. The final coach leaves the platform. Its red lamp grows smaller along the track, then disappears around a curve between wet trees. Silence settles over the station. You lift your suitcase and walk toward the main building. The doors open into a warm waiting room filled with wooden benches, local maps, and the soft murmur of arriving travellers. Through the high windows, the Smoky Mountains rise beyond the town. Clouds drift among the ridges. Snow rests along the upper slopes, and the long winter journey ends beneath a sky that seems to lower itself gently over the valley. The station doors close softly behind you. Warm air settles around your coat as you cross the waiting room, where a coal stove glows beside a circle of wooden chairs. Travellers speak in low voices. A station clerk sorts papers behind a glass window, and a porter rolls an empty baggage cart across the tiled floor. You pause beneath the high ceiling. The building feels unusually still without the train beside it. Your body continues expecting motion. For several moments, the floor seems to sway beneath your shoes, though the tiles remain perfectly steady. The sensation follows you outside. A taxi waits near the entrance with its engine running. Snow gathers around the tyres, and a thin stream of smoke rises from the exhaust. You place your suitcase in the trunk and settle into the back seat. The driver pulls away from the station. The town passes slowly beyond the window. Shopkeepers clear wet snow from their doorways. A delivery truck unloads baskets near a grocery shop. Steam covers the windows of a small cafe where customers sit beneath bright lamps. The road begins to climb. Houses become fewer, and trees gather close to the pavement. Water runs from the slopes in narrow silver streams. Snow rests on stone walls and wooden fences, while mist moves through the upper branches. Your lodging stands on a hillside above the town. It is a broad wooden inn with a deep porch and several chimneys. Yellow light shines from the windows. Carved sign swings gently near the road, squeaking each time the wind turns it. You step from the taxi. The mountain air feels cold and clean against your face. It carries the scents of pine, wet earth, and wood smoke somewhere among the trees. Water moves over stones with a steady whisper. Inside, the innkeeper welcomes you and hands you a heavy brass key. The room lies at the end of a quiet corridor. Its floorboards creak beneath your steps. Framed photographs show mountain families, railway workers, and visitors standing beside automobiles from earlier decades. A faded map hangs near the stairs, marked with trails, rivers, and ridges that seem to fold into one another. Your room is simple. A wooden bed stands beneath a quilt stitched in dark red and green. A washstand rests near the wall. 2 chairs face a small fireplace where logs burn behind an iron screen. You set down your suitcase. Silence gathers around you, interrupted only by the crackle of fire and the soft tapping of sleet against the window. The quiet feels different from the sleeping car. It has no wheels beneath it, no couplings, no whistle, no hidden machinery. You remove your coat and sit beside the fire. Heat reaches your hands gradually. The flames move across the logs, revealing deep orange cracks beneath blackened wood. A clock ticks on the mantel with careful patience. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park was formally dedicated in 1940, preserving a vast landscape of forests, rivers, ridges, and historic communities. Its creation protected natural beauty, but it also required families living within the new boundaries to sell or leave homes connected to generations of memory. The mountains outside your window are therefore both sanctuary and homeland. They hold protected forests, abandoned foundations, old roads, family cemeteries, and traces of settlement slowly returning to the earth. Researchers continue to dispute whether tourism mainly preserves mountain culture or reshapes it for visitors seeking a simpler past. Travelers bring income and public attention. They also arrive with expectations, cameras, souvenirs, and a talent for calling ordinary local life charming. The fire gives a sudden pop. A spark rises behind the screen and disappears. You open your suitcase and remove the paper ticket. Its edges are softened from handling. The punched marks remain visible, each small hole recording permission to pass through stations, valleys, snowfields, and mountain grades. You place it on the mantel. It looks modest beside the brass clock, yet it carries an entire night within it. You remember the glow of the dining car, the taste of hot coffee, the quiet platform buried beneath snow, and the long whistle moving through darkness. None of those moments appears grand while it happens. Together, they become something larger. Travel creates memory from ordinary details. A curtain ring tapping against metal, a cup trembling on a table, a stranger passing the butter, a worker raising one gloved hand beside the track. A curious old method of warming mountain beds involves heating bricks near a stove, wrapping them in cloth, and placing them beneath the blankets. The arrangement is practical, though forgetting the cloth would turn comfort into a lesson delivered with remarkable speed. Your bed requires no heated brick. The quilt feels thick and warm beneath your hand. You sit on the edge and remove your shoes, placing them neatly beside the wall. The room remains still, but your body carries the rhythm of the rails. You lie down. For a moment, you imagine the mattress moving beneath you. The illusion is gentle. It feels as though the mountain inn has become another sleeper, resting upon invisible tracks. Outside, the sleet softens into snow. Flakes drift past the window and settle on the porch roof. The town lights glow below through mist, while the ridges rise beyond them in quiet blue layers. You close your eyes. The train is gone from sight, yet its movement remains within you. It has carried you through storm, darkness, crowded tables, silent towns, and narrow valleys. It has shown you that comfort does not require perfect stillness. Sometimes comfort is a warm lamp inside a shaking room. Sometimes it's a stranger making your bill. Sometimes it is knowing that while the storm hides the road, the rails still lead onward. As the room grows quieter, let your thoughts settle beside the fading rail sounds. The storm is now only a soft memory against the window, and the mountains hold the night with patient arms. Take one slow breath, then another, and allow every remaining worry to loosen. If this journey brought you comfort, share in the comments the moment you enjoyed most. Whether it was the warm dining car, the lonely station, the card game in the snow, or the first sight of the Blue Ridges, your memories help this quiet community feel close, even across distances. When you are ready for another gentle passage through history, choose the next video waiting on the channel and let a new road open softly before you. For now, rest deeply, keep the warmth of the sleeper near your heart, and let the last whistle fade until only peaceful silence remains around you. Blessings to you and your family.